I believed I was a strong father. For years, I believed that. I told myself the story the way you tell yourself the only story you know. I raised my voice because I cared, because someone had to, because the world wasn't going to go easy on him, and I wasn't about to either. That's what I told myself. That volume meant urgency. That urgency meant love. I controlled because I wanted discipline, structure. I wanted them to know how life worked, that it had edges, that it had consequences, that softness was a liability. I thought I was preparing them. I thought I was building something in them that would hold when I wasn't there. I didn't apologize, because parents don't. Because the moment you apologize, you hand something over, some authority, some ground, and I wasn't willing to do that. I had watched men lose their families by being weak, and I decided, young, that weakness would never be the thing that took mine. I thought fear built respect. I was wrong. I thought toughness built character. And slowly, not all at once, but slowly, the way a photograph fades if you leave it in the light too long, I started to see what I had actually built. I wasn't leading my children. I was managing them. And management is not love. Management is distance with a job title. Management is control dressed up as care. And I called it strength for years because the truth was much harder to carry. I want to tell you what the house felt like. Not what I thought it felt like, what it actually felt like. When I pulled into the driveway, and I know this now, I know it because they told me years later in the careful way people tell you things they've been holding a long time. When I pulled into the driveway, the energy in the house changed. Someone would hear the car, and that sound, just that sound, was enough to turn the television down, enough to check the kitchen, enough to read the room before I'd even walked into it. They were already scanning, already calculating, already asking the question that no child should have to ask about their father. What mood is he in? They watched me the way you watch the weather. Not because they were afraid of me, that's what I told myself, but because they had learned the way children learn everything, through repetition, through pattern, through the body remembering what the mind tries to forget. They had learned that my mood was load-bearing, that it held things up or brought things down. Small mistakes felt dangerous, a spilt drink, a forgotten task, a wrong answer at the wrong moment. Not because I hit, not because I screamed every time, but because they never quite knew. And the not knowing, that was its own kind of damage. That was the thing that lived in the walls of that house. I thought I was correcting them. I was teaching them to shrink. Every time my anger filled the room, they got smaller, not weaker. I want to be careful here. Not weaker because they survived it, and survival builds something, but smaller, more careful, more contained. They learned to take up less space around me, to need less, to show less, to risk less. And I called that respect. Children should not have to manage a parent's emotions. That is not their work. That was never their work. That was mine. And I gave it to them without knowing, without asking. I handed them a weight and called it growing up. Anger didn't make them stronger. It made them cautious. And cautious children become adults who don't trust that love is safe. I did that.
I want to talk about the divorce, not the reasons, not whose fault, not the long argument that led to the longer silence. I'm not here to assign blame, rewrite history, or make myself the misunderstood one in a story that was never that simple. I want to talk about what happened to them. Holidays got split in half. Not shortened, not adjusted, split down the middle. like something you divide when you can no longer agree on who it belongs to. Christmas morning became Christmas morning and Christmas afternoon. Birthdays became a call and then a dinner on different days with different cakes, because that's how you manage the geometry of a broken family. You divide the calendar and tell yourself it's fair. But children don't experience calendars. They experience presence. They experience who is there when they wake up scared, who is there when the small, ordinary Tuesday things happen, the homework, the argument with a friend, the mood they can't explain. Those moments don't schedule themselves around visitation agreements. I became the other house. I want you to feel the weight of that phrase. Not the father, not home, the other house. The place they went on weekends. The place with different rules and different food, and the particular silence of a man trying very hard to make 2 days feel like enough. I became the scheduled phone call. The voice on the other end was asking how school was, how they were, filling the space with questions, because questions are easier than sitting with the fact that you don't actually know. You're asking because you weren't there. You're asking because somewhere, without ceremony, without a moment you could point to, you became someone they had to catch up with. I was alive. I just wasn't there. And I told myself that meant well counted for something, that intention was a kind of presence, that loving them from a distance was still loving them. And it was. But love without proximity has limits. Love without consistency leaves gaps, and children fill gaps with whatever explanation is available to them. I didn't just lose my marriage. My children lost consistency. They lost the ordinary, the unremarkable, irreplaceable ordinary of a father in the same house on the same Tuesday, just there, not performing, not making the weekend count, just there. And I didn't understand, not for a long time, how much that ordinary the whole thing was, how much of that was what they needed and what I had stopped being. Absence is louder than anger. Anger, at least, is present. Anger fills the room, and the room knows you're in it. But absence is a different kind of damage. It's the chair that's always slightly empty. It's the habit of not expecting you. It's the moment, and this one broke me when I finally understood it. It's the moment they stopped saving things to tell you. Because saving things requires believing someone is coming, and I had taught them, slowly, without meaning to, that I might not be. There wasn't a dramatic moment. I want to be honest about that. There was no argument, no door slamming, no single conversation I can point to and say, there, that's where it happened. That's where I lost him. It was quieter than that. It was a Sunday, dinner, and my child who used to talk with their whole body, who used to interrupt themselves because the next thought was already arriving, who used to need me to know things, to witness things, sat across from me and said, I'm fine. How are you? How are you? The politeness. That's the word I keep coming back to. Politeness. Because rudeness would have meant something. Rudeness would have meant there was still enough heat, still enough investment, still enough of me in their interior world to be worth the energy of anger. Anger is intimate. Anger means you still believe the other person owes you something. Politeness means you stopped collecting. They had stopped confiding in me, and I hadn't noticed immediately because they'd stopped gradually, the way water recedes. You don't see it moving. You just one day look and the shoreline is different, and you can't remember when it changed. They used to bring me their problems, messy, irrational teenage problems that I probably handled badly, that I probably met with solutions when they needed witness, but they brought them. They thought of me. Then they stopped. They stopped arguing with me too, and I had mistaken that for maturity, for peace. I told myself we'd moved past the difficult years, that we'd come out the other side. I told myself the calm was growth. It wasn't growth, it was giving up. There's a specific kind of pain in realizing that your child has become emotionally independent, not because you guided them there, not because you walked alongside them and slowly, deliberately loosened the grip the way good parents do, but because they had to,
because you weren't available enough, or safe enough, or present enough. And so they did what humans do when they need something and it isn't coming. They found another way. They built a life that didn't require me at the center of it. And I stood there on that Sunday, across the table from someone I loved more than I had ever managed to show, and I felt it, the distance, not as geography, not as schedule, but as something structural, something they had built carefully, quietly over the years to protect themselves from the disappointment of needing me too much. My child treated me like a guest, considered, courteous, kept at just the right distance. And the devastating thing, the thing I had to sit with alone that night, was that I had taught them that. Not with cruelty, not with intention, but with every absence, every mood they had to manage, every moment I was physically present and emotionally somewhere else entirely. I had taught them that I was someone to be handled, and they had learned it perfectly. That realization doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It just settles somewhere behind the sternum, heavy and still, and you sit with it because there is nothing else to do, because the distance isn't between you and them. The distance is between who you were and who they needed you to be. I am older now. And age does something to regret that youth doesn't allow. When you're young, regret is something you negotiate with. You tell yourself there's time. You tell yourself the relationship will correct itself, that the distance will close, that one good conversation can do the work of 100 absent ones. You make promises to yourself that live comfortably in the future tense. And then one day, the future tense runs out. Not dramatically, not all at once, but you feel it, a shortening of time, of chances, of the particular window in which certain things can still be said and land the way they need to. You look at your hands, you count the years, and the arithmetic is no longer on your side. I understand something now that I wish I had understood when it still had room to change everything. Children don't need perfect fathers. They never needed perfect. Perfect was never the ask. What they needed, what mine needed, what yours need, what every child who has ever looked up at a parent and quietly hoped needed, was safe. Just safe. A father whose presence felt like ground rather than weather, whose love didn't have conditions buried inside it, whose arms were a place you ran toward instead of a mood you learned to read from across the room. Safe. I wish I had listened more. Not heard. I heard plenty. I was in the room. I processed the words. But listening is different. Listening is what happens when you put down the need to respond, to correct, to redirect, to make the conversation useful, and you just receive another person, fully, without an agenda. I didn't know how to do that. I'm not sure anyone taught me, but I wish I had learned it sooner. I wish I had learned it while they were still young enough that it would have felt like safety instead of surprise. I wish I had apologized sooner. The first apology, the real one, not the managed one, not the one designed to end the tension. The first time I sat across from my child and said, I was wrong, without a but, without an explanation trailing behind it. That came too late, years too late. And an apology that comes late still matters, it does, but it lands differently. It lands in a place that is already scarred over, and scar tissue, however tough, is never quite the same as skin that was never broken. I wish I had softened faster. I wish I had stayed calmer. I wish I had understood, earlier, so much earlier, that presence chosen over pride is not weakness, that the man who says, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I love you more than I love being right, that man is not diminished. That man is the whole point. That man is what they were waiting for. I was waiting to be respected.
They were waiting to be held. And here is where I have to stop and just say it, without softening it, without finding the redemptive turn that makes it easier to carry. I cannot go back. I cannot go back and sit on the floor with the version of them that was small enough to still need me that way. I cannot go back to the bedtimes I skipped, the arguments I won, the silences I let go on too long because I was too proud to be the one who broke them. I cannot go back to the Sunday mornings or the school plays or the ordinary Tuesdays that I was physically inside, but emotionally nowhere near. I cannot hold the version of them that needed me most. That child is grown now. That window is closed. And whatever I build from here, and I intend to build, I intend to show up differently for whatever time remains. It will be built on the foundation of that loss, that permanent, unresolvable loss. I am not asking for forgiveness tonight. Forgiveness is theirs to give or not give in their own time, on their own terms. I have no claim to it. I have no right to need it from them before I do the work. That would just be one more thing I ask them to carry for me. What I have instead is this: humility. The quiet, unglamorous, daily practice of knowing what I was and choosing even now, even late, to become something closer to what they deserved. It won't undo it, but I will not look away from it either. That is the least I can do. That is where I begin.